Hello, Ian Wilson here from Aviation. Once again, an unscripted video, so please bear with me if I'm stumbling over things a little bit, but it's all here. We're talking today about safety management systems and the academic structure behind a safety management system. I don't want to scare you with the word academic, but that's what it is. Why do we need to have a look at this? Well, a couple of reasons. We've talked about this before, but it's not just all about compliance. First of all, the reason I'm doing the video is because we find that, understandably, in the aviation industry in Australia, where safety management systems amongst Part 135 and 138 operators have only just become important, we find a lack of knowledge and understanding about how this system is constructed and what the parts of it are, how they all fit together, and how that can be supported with a really strong operating platform, a software platform. So I think the safety management system academic structure is very similar to other business management structures that you'll find within your aviation company. That's just my opinion. I'm not an expert in that field, but we find that if we build this structure correctly within your operating platform, it supports all of those other business management systems as well. Again, asking the question why we're doing this, well, I'll just go back to one of my previous videos. When I talk with our current clients and past clients about the advantages they found from getting us into their business to set up the management structures properly and the supporting platforms properly, they've found that their stress levels have reduced. They've had more time available for managing the business, for their own creativity and for spending time with their family, etc. And the business has become stronger across the board. In other words, they make more money. So it's important to look at this as not just a compliance exercise. So I'll just get started. What do we do in aviation businesses in Australia and around the world? Well, I've just lined up a few boxes here to fill up with some of the activities that we undertake. We certainly do a lot of administration, so that's part of an aviation business. As a Part 135 operator, you'll be engaged in charter, or it used to be called as charter, so I've just put a C up there for that. You might also, as a Part 138 operator, be carrying out various airwork activities, whether that be photography or incendiary dropping or baiting or whatever activity you're engaged in. You might have some specialist activities like firefighting going on, for which you have a lot of unusual and specific hazards to consider. And a number of operators will have their own Car 30 operation or Part 145 operation for engineering. So there's a bunch of activities that you might be involved in your aviation business. Now, in order for that to take place, we have to support all of that with what I like to call a mantle of safety. I've borrowed that term from John Flynn, who, as some of you might know, was the founder of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. I think it's a great term, and it definitely conjures up images of a net, a protective net or a protective baseline that allows us to do activities but also keeps our staff and our equipment safe. So the mantle of safety underpins all of our activities. The mantle of safety is held up by 4 pillars. Now, many of you have probably seen this diagram before and this analogy. There's a bit of a different spin on this coming at the end, so stick with us if you've already seen it, but otherwise it's a good refresher. The 4 pillars are indicative of management processes that exist within your business to support your mantle of safety, to support your operations. The first being policy and objectives. The second is risk management. Notice I don't say safety risk management, just risk management, and risk assurance and promotions. What's involved in those 4 pillars? And this is what we know to be the 12 elements of a safety management system. And you can have a look at CASA Form 1591, the auditing a spreadsheet that's available freely on the CASA website. And it takes you through all of this stuff, but just as a visual representation, policies and objectives are made up of management commitment. So the senior leadership team providing adequate revenue and resources to safety management activities and indicating to the rest of the business that they are intimately involved in the safety management side of things. They're not just about driving profit, they want to do so safely. Management commitment. So there'll be a policy statement that's signed by the chief executive or the accountable executive. So SA stands for, not for situational awareness, which is distracting me at the moment, but for safety accountability. And it should also say safety accountability and responsibilities there. So we're talking about senior leadership team who are involved in the safety management process. What are their accountabilities? Well, generally they're accountable to the accountable executive, and they're responsible for certain activities within their part of the business that keep operations safe. And that extends right through the senior leadership team and down into, well, I won't say down, but into the working crew. So flight crew, engineers, ground crew, cabin crew, all staff within the business. So we all have responsibilities and we are all accountable to somebody upline from us. And that's not the least of which is the safety manager, who is accountable to the accountable executive and responsible for the management of the safety system. KP stands for key personnel. So we assign various roles to people within the organisation from a safety perspective. And ERP, there is an emergency response plan in place. It's documented, everybody understands their roles within that, and it's actively tested regularly. Excuse me. And of course documents, so your library full of safety management manual and flight operations handbooks and your exposition and your quality manual, etc. Risk management. I'll just jump in here and ask you what you think the definition of risk is. It's interesting the different answers I get for that question when talking to clients and people in industry. And we may as well do hazard while we're here. So what's a hazard? Well, to me, a hazard is something within the business or external to the business, within the environment, that can hurt or harm or injure or worse, carry out worse effects on us or the business itself. Just in a layman's way of talking about it. Whereas risk, I often get the answer back, risk is that you might die crossing the road. Well, sort of. That's a possible outcome associated with the hazard of crossing the road. The risk is just like an alphanumeric measurement or a colour that is associated with a rating. So we use a hazard and risk matrix to determine that, or we might use a bow tie risk assessment to work out what we feel is the risk rating associated with encountering a particular hazard. But it's not generally a group of words. It's an alphanumeric indicator like 1A or a colour like yellow or one word like medium or high. Hazard identification is part of the risk management process. So a robust and effective and operational system that is bringing in information regarding potential hazards around the business and around the people in the business, and processing those so that we understand what they are and we can apply control measures to any encounters with those hazards. Risk assessment, I've already mentioned. So the use of a HARM, a hazard and risk matrix, or bow tie, or some other tool for assessing risk. Risk assurance, of course, we all know about audits. What a pain in the neck. They distract us from actually working on safety and quality, but they are important internally from the point of view of helping us to identify hazards before they become events or incidents. And they're also important for compliance. So, of course, internal auditing helps us prepare for the inevitable external audit, which and allow us to be as compliant as possible before that external auditor shows up. So within risk assurance areas, not just audits, but we have safety performance monitoring. So an understanding as to what our targets are associated with our safety objectives, what indicators we're using our indicators associated with our safety performance objectives, and what the targets are associated with those indicators. And the ability to pull data from our management system to show whether or not we're reaching those targets. So safety performance management is important within risk assurance. Management of change. What changes are going on in the business? Do we have a system set up to account for that, to monitor it, and to risk assess the change from a safety perspective? And continuous improvement. So part of the safety performance monitoring, I guess, where we're saying, what can we do that's better? And we can always do something better. The moment, I guess, we sit there and, have our weekend beer and say, well, it's all squared away, we're safe, is probably the moment we should be considering leaving the industry, because, as we all know, that's the moment when the hazard strikes. So continuous improvement's important. Keep looking out for ways that we can do better in our safety management systems and platforms. Promotions is a bit of a misnomer, I think, but it's fundamentally made up of training and education and communications. So, your safety management training processes and fatigue management training processes, education for staff and executives around those, the importance of those elements of the safety management system, and communications. So how do we get information out to the crew and to everybody that associated with our risk management processes, with our hazard identification processes? So a good structure for that, like an alert notice system. Communication is very important, and also promotional activities like magazines and 6-monthly or yearly safety management information sent out to the crew that sits on the coffee table in the crew room, and people can read and browse through and see what's been happening. Now, the whole structure, the 12 elements and the 4 pillars are, I like to think, are held up by a foundation. I'll just move myself out of the way there again. The foundation is probably the most important part of this structure, of course. We need management buy-in. What's it made up of, this foundation? We need management buy-in, so that's associated with management commitment here. If we don't have leaders that live and breathe this system and and talk about it continually with their crew, then the crew don't believe in it either. The senior leadership team won't believe in it either, and it'll be completely ineffective. So you will have lost, you might be compliant, but you will have lost the opportunity to have your business management system, in this case a safety management system, providing you with advantages in relation to lower stress, more time available, and more profit. You may as well, if you're going to invest in one of these things, you may as well live and breathe it and really work it so that it has the maximum possible benefit in your business. So management buy-in, critical. I'll just tell you a brief anecdote. A lot of the businesses we go into, when I start talking with them about safety management system, I start with the staff working in the field. So engineers in the hangar, pilots around the aircraft, ground handlers, admin staff, general, the working crew. And they'll tell me, how they feel about the business and how they feel about their work and if they feel safe or not. We ask questions around that. And then I move towards the senior leadership team, and we'll ask the same questions, and they'll give us answers in relation to those same elements. By the time I finished with the senior leadership team, I can pretty well profile the chief executive, because if there's negative feedback in both of those levels of the business, I know what I'm going to find at the top is a reactive leader who's less interested in taking care of their people and more interested in themselves and how much profit they can make. And I'll be blunt, I've met people like that. We don't always see them, but they're there, and I tend to try and avoid working with them because it's hard to change a leopard's spots at that level, I find. Having said that, we do our best, and this is part of the education process. So apologies for the bluntness of that message, but it is part of the truth of this business. What else do we need? We need a just culture. So you can go and find a definition for just culture. There's a million of them on the internet or in your manuals or whatever. The way I think about it is that people feel empowered to use a system to report what they see is going on without fear of punitive action as a result, even if they've made a mistake, even if they've screwed something up. They feel that they can tell the business about it, and that the worst thing that's going to happen to them is that they'll get a bit of training or some counselling, or that there might be a procedural change around it. They're not concerned about their jobs if they report. Without this, you do not have a decent safety management system, because one of the primary critical elements of a strong safety management system is high levels of reporting. We don't want lots of high and extreme risk reports. We want to see a few of those, but we want to see a lot of medium risk, low risk or very low risk reports coming into the system, because that tells us that people are keen to tell the business what's going on. And look, if I'm the chief executive or the accountable executive, I want to know what's going on in that business at every level all the time. Filtered, of course, for the higher risk elements. So just culture is very important. Secondary to that, just culture also encompasses the idea that if there's been any malicious activity or negligence on behalf of anybody within the business in association with an action or an activity, then there will be punitive action taken. So the balance has to be there. The business needs to be able to have that balance. And finally, humans are probably the most important of those three underpinning elements. Without humans, you don't have a system. There's no point in the system. We're what it's all about in the end. But the problem with humans is that we have a bunch of factors. We've got all of these factors that affect how we do our work and how interested we are in our work, etc. Example, stress, fatigue, and if you read any academic safety material, there'll be some reference to the fact that in most cases where there's been an accident or a serious incident, stress and fatigue are contributing factors. So we need to manage these things with our people in order to make sure that our baseline, our foundation is solid. Training, we need to make sure they're trained well and that we're tracking how that training's working. Aptitude, we've got to employ well. Some people just are not cut out for certain types of work and really good at other types of work. We need to make sure that the right people are in the right locations in the business. Education and experience. I don't need to explain the obvious sort of advantage of having people with both those elements. So that is the 4 pillars and the 12 elements. That's how I understand them. If we don't have this structure in place, or if one of the pillars gets a bit wobbly, we're not doing, typically the one that does wobble more often than others is the promotions one. It's the last thing we think about, sending out magazines and information. Any one of those pillars starts to get a bit wobbly, then the safety mantle wobbles around, and we're compromising our ability to do these operations. And if you're not going to take care of this, you may as well go do something else, like it says up the top here, run a cafe. The great thing about this academic structure is that it is, I think, identical to the academic principles behind other business management systems. For example, WHS, environmental management, quality management, and security management. So if you've got a really good platform to build this system into, like Air Maestro or Risk Ringer, then you can support an integrated management approach to all of these systems in your business. So you're investing once and you're getting 5 outcomes. You're getting 5 areas of your business shored up and streamlined and integrated to support less stress, more time, and more profit. I'm Ian Wilson from Aviation. Have a great day and be safe out there. Cheers.